Hi, this is Scott from Spectre Gear with another Tactical Shotgunner Pro Tip. And for as long as I've been shooting defensive shotguns, and that's going to go all the way back to 1981, so I think I'm celebrating, or I'm a little over my 40th year shooting shotguns. I have, and this is consistent throughout, I continually hear people bring up the possibility or recommend that if you live in an urban setting where you're kind of packed in pretty densely amongst other people, like apartment complexes, trailer parks, things like that, that if you're going to run a shotgun, you should run Birdshot in your gun. Now the premise is, and this is one thing I hear quite often, is, well, it won't go through drywall. I can put my fist through drywall pretty darn easily, so if it won't go through drywall, I doubt it's going to go through people. And I'm going to kind of show how that plays out. Now, that is directly related to distance, because I will readily admit that at certain ranges, even Birdshot, and if you've seen the anatomy of a shotgun shell video that I did, I break open one of these, I show you what's inside of it, I show you the actual shot that's inside of this, I think it's a number 8 load. At very close distances, this will definitely peel your grape. This will definitely sort you out. But what I want to do is kind of a visual demonstration of what those distances are like, because the distances we're talking about are maybe too close to be dealing with it with a long gun. So what I'm going to do for purposes of this exercise, we're going to be using, again, this is Federal number 8, 1.5 ounce, 3 dram loads. 2 3/4 inch 12 gauge, by the way. And I'm going to start off at very close distance. We're going to be about 2-3 yards away when we do this. And in doing so, I'm going to go ahead and put one right there. And you'll get to see that at that distance, it's going to be kind of an interesting result. So let me go ahead and step into position here. Am I all good? All right, so as you can see, that right there is, and let me bring the round out again so I get it absolutely right. Yep, that's 1.5 ounces of pre-fragmented slug going into an area not much larger than the muzzle of the weapon itself. At this distance, and again, we're talking 6.5, 7 feet, it's decidedly lethal at that distance. Birdshot will definitely do it. The problem is, though, you are so close at that point to your adversary that they can close that distance and cause you a significant problem if you don't get on that trigger right away. That's a little maybe too close for comfort for me. But what I really want to illustrate now is what happens when we start moving back. Because once this pattern opens up, and you no longer have the effect of basically one pre-fragmented slug flying through the air, and instead we're now talking about a collection of individual pellets, the story changes pretty dramatically at that point. So what I'm going to do now, we're going to go ahead and cut the camera off, and I'm going to move back a little bit further, and then I'm going to go ahead and put one center mass, and we're going to do that at 7 yards. And we'll show you the difference between about 7 feet and about 7 yards. So with that, we'll go ahead and stop it here, and we'll go ahead and move out. Okay, here we are at 7 yards. I'm going to go ahead and put one center mass, and we'll see what the pattern looks like. Okay, we've went ahead and walked it in so we can see the proceeds of what we have. This big old honking hole you see here, there's a pretty good void on the back where the cardboard is missing, but that's your wad, so that's not going to do anything. What I want to draw your attention to is this pattern. This is just 7 yards, and this is how much it's opened up. So now, rather than going from that tunnel wound that pre-fragmented slug would have, we've now gone to a fairly wide pattern where we really don't have the pellets grouped together in any significant amount that it would cause any necessary, or rather any dramatic wounding effect. All we've got is just a bunch of little tiny pellets that are going to hit, and because they lack the mass and the size, they're not going to penetrate very deeply at all. You're going to mess the guy up. You're going to give him some road rash, but you are not going to stop your adversary with this. So I guess the best thing you can hope for at that point is if you throw down on somebody at 7 yards with Birdshot, that you give them enough of a basically a superficial wound that it will dissuade them from coming any closer and killing you. But at least we know that if they do close in on you to take your life, when they get about 6 feet away, you can put one in their gourd and stop them. but I think the point here is pretty solid. But I'm going to add one more thing here. I'm going to open it up just a little bit further, because for most of you out there, you've got a hallway that's about 10 yards long. So I want to do one more, and I want to take this out to 10 yards and kind of show you what we're talking about. Now, we don't have any pellets off paper, but one thing you're going to see is just that distance from 7 to 10 yards, you're going to see a lot of pellets out here. I almost guarantee it. So we'll cut the camera at this point, and we'll go ahead and move out to 10 yards. Okay, here we are at 10 yards. This is going to be a typical distance from the end of your hallway, maybe out to your front door. You've got an adversary coming through the door. You're going to stop him with that Birdshot that you put in there. So let's go ahead and see what this shot looks like, and then once I've fired it, we'll go back down range and take a look at the proceeds. All right. Okay, well, everybody gets proven wrong at one time or another, I suppose. We don't have as many rounds off paper as I thought. We got a couple that sneaked out to the side, but we've still got a pretty open area. The really odd thing about this, and this goes to that thing that I've talked about in terms of barrel dynamics. Sometimes you get odd results from shotgun shells. The pattern opened up a bit, but oddly enough, if you look at the distance between 7 feet and 7 yards, and then you add another 3 yards to that, which is significantly more than 7 feet, it really didn't open up all that much more. But again, the effect is the same. It's spread across a fairly large area, very small pellets, very low mass. You're not going to get any kind of significant penetration whatsoever. Simple fatty tissue is going to stop that. Again, it's going to be an annoying wound, and someone's going to have to lay in the ER and have somebody pluck those little pellets out of them, one after another after another. But in terms of actually putting somebody down, this isn't going to be a good option for you. So unless you plan on doing a lot of fighting in a phone booth, I don't think Birdshot is necessarily the thing for you. Now, there are some specialty loads that we'll talk about later, and I'm going to get into some things that I've dealt with in the past where people have involved shotguns in areas such as nuclear facilities where penetration concerns are a massive deal, and they've gone with some loads that are kind of interesting. They may not immediately come to mind, but they are pretty darn effective, and they are very low penetrating once they hit a hard target, but they work awesome on soft targets. So we'll talk more about that later. But in terms of Birdshot for self-defense, I don't recommend it. It's great for stopping snakes, not so good for stopping people. So with that, I'll bring it to an end, and that'll kind of conclude this test. So thank you for listening.